Welcome everyone to another adventure in being at home with George. And this week, um, I was reflecting and thinking about what would I like to talk about, and it hit me that I got a letter from someone that attended one of my offerings, and I'd like to share the letter or the inquiry, actually the question. I get questions all the time in different formats, and so I was doing recently I was doing a fundraiser, and so I said, "Dear George, I was in the Zoom tonight. Thank you for your wise words. I bought my son your book, and I'm signing him up for your program." So I talked about the upcoming online the Mindful Athlete program that we're going to relaunch in a couple of weeks. And so she was responding to that. I didn't get to ask, but if you were able and willing, I wonder if you have any advice for a young uh, athlete, 15-year-old athlete who can't play sports right now. She's working out every day and trying to stay strong, but is having a hard time. And so my response is the same response I give most folks. Everyone is struggling with this pause from how things were. I am reminded of the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's been quoted, quotes unquote. Keep training and work on the inner game. Work on the things we usually don't have time for, like watching video of those we want to emulate. So the video we can also put in whether it's reading things or watching whatever it is that we need to watch, and that represents the behavior, the way of being we want to emulate. And reflect and think about your core values and what it is you want to accomplish. And so for me, I think that's a good place to start. I get that all of the time. I get that a lot recently, and even before now, people did a challenge. So we're challenged very much. So in this time of COVID, and even now with parents and communities having to look at the fact of what school going to look like. Not only some of the school systems are interested in getting in the classrooms in the next couple of weeks, and then of course some of the universities are struggling with how the students are going to be. So, they're going to have some places going to have students on campus, but very few students. Yet all of the learning is going to be online. And on the high school and grade school and the other levels, there's all these challenges. And so the best way to deal with what is things as they are is, I talk about in my book, is that Bruce Lee, one of the things he was fond of saying, be like water. So you have to be like water. So whatever comes up, like, okay, this is how it is, and I'm doing everything I can. I have the courage, the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so that's going to require, in my way of thinking, and I've been using this serenity prayer for coming up on 36 years since I've been in sobriety, and it's been really helpful because it helps me to weed through what the focus needs to be on, what's the appropriate conversations I'm supposed to be having, and what are the main things or what's the most important things that I need to focus on. And so here it is. It's that as I talk about the inner game or the inner life, and okay, I can't do team participation in sports, or I can't do what I normally do, whether I'm in a band or I can't go back to my workplace, or even being a parent. I'm spending most of my time, or I will be spending my time doing childcare, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing that or able to work. Even if I work at home, I have to figure out that stuff. And some of us may not even have jobs. Some of us may not have an idea of not only what work we're going to be doing, but where we live. And so, to me, being like water is, so what can I control? How can I develop the serenity? And a lot of that has to do with my attitude and my mindset, having the right attitude having the right mindset. And so I'm encouraging people to generate the hope, but part of generating the hope is this idea of understanding, well, what's my attitude? What's my mind? Like, how do I make my mind my best friend? So some of my core values could include things like self-love or love, compassion, this idea of reflecting before, during, and after, just reflecting on things. It's interesting because Howard Gardner wrote a book called Extraordinary Minds. And in that book, he talks about three things that extraordinary people like Mozart and Einstein and Virginia Woolf do, and that is they reflect. One of the things you do is reflection, reflecting on, okay, what am I doing? Who am I being? What are my core values, as I talked about? Core values being what are the values I want to live by? So, love and compassion are two really good ones. Joy, happiness. So, whatever the core values are, how do I live according to those core values, and how do I train my mind so that I can create space between the stimulus and response, and in that space I have the freedom and power to choose in alignment with my core values of being present, of love, compassion, just allowing things. I talked about it before, the 4 A's, this idea of awareness and acceptance. This is how things are. I don't like it, it hurts. But once I accept it, then I can deal with it. And how what's the self love approach, the self compassion approach, where I can be loving, not make myself wrong, not make anybody else wrong. So what is this? How can I be like water? How can I relate to this situation in a way that empowers me, that allows me to tap into my inner greatness, that masterpiece within, and having the right mindset or the growth mindset, which is all about what's the lesson? What do I learn here? There's something for me to learn, and when I learn it, I have to practice it. When I learn and practice it, it will result in a particular experience. And so, the love and compassion and the self-reflection. So it's really simple. So talking about this young person or all of us that we're doing as much as we can, and we're not able to get back out to the new normal because we're not going to go back to the way things were. But yet, if we're really thinking about what we're going to do in the future and we're looking towards the future without understanding it's how we deal with now, how we make the shift from doing to being, so that the being gives us the flexibility, the opportunity, the readiness for when we do get back to what we're doing, we hit the ground both feet running, or flat and running and being grounded, but at the same time being able to get back into it and to approach it, to get back to it in a way where we're actually in we have a better mindset and we have a better attitude and we have a way forward because we've been focused on being. So the doing is just going to be a reflection of the being. And so how are we being now? So how we deal with the hurt and how do we generate the hope, as I've been talking about. And of course, when I do these sessions every week, it's really about how do we create a possibility for us to really understand that we are wired to be able to do two things: to hold the hurt and to generate the hope. And so recently I've been focusing more on generating the hope, or ways of being that allow us to be not only be hopeful but to be present and to do the self-care and the self-compassion that we need to do, so that when we meet folks, when we engage with folks, and it's important that we stay connected with each other, that we relate to them. For me, the challenge is always when I get into a funk and I'm generating a hope and I'm doing everything I can do and I'm being the way I need to be, then how do I take that to everyone? So for me, it's been really important for me to meet everybody with kindness, with compassion, seeing the divine spark in the other person. But when I focus on serving, reaching out to other people, I find myself, or it helps me to feel better about myself. And so just sending these posts, these YouTube posts that we do, I text them to a lot of people. And when I text it to people, they respond back immediately sometimes. But the main thing I get is thank you for thinking about me and I needed this just in time. So it could be a text, it could be a picture, it could be just a few words of encouragement, of how are you doing? Was thinking about you, love and blessings, whatever it is. We go into the store, hi, how are you doing? What kind of day are you having? Or just a smile. And even things as simple as when you're driving in your car. I'm driving in my car and I pause and I let a person, get in or come out of a side street. And oftentimes when I do that, people come out and they don't even acknowledge. They just come out with the attitude of, what took you so long? At least that's my interpretation. Instead of coming out, and then sometimes they come out and they just smile and say, or they wave, thank you. And when that happens, you feel there's a feeling of being connected. There's a feeling of being acknowledged versus being in this thing where we're so into our own thing that when someone does us a good deed, we're not able to respond in kind. And I'm not saying I do it to respond in kind, but it's important that we acknowledge each other. When we interact with people, if we can acknowledge each other. So if someone does something, or like if there's an act of kindness that we give, or somebody lets you cut in the line, or if you're driving your car and they pause and let you pull out, that it's important that we acknowledge that act of kindness or that act of community or cooperation. And even if we just look at them and smile and say thank you or whatever, that those are opportunities that we have that will actually, these acts of kindness, these acts of feeling connected or seeing self and other, is really, really huge. And it's really simple. I was at a post office yesterday because I was sending a book to a friend and I had some postage and I said, how are you? What kind of day you having? It's a gentleman, and he said it's been one of those days where I'm running into all of these folks that are coming in here with attitudes and they're just not happy folks. And we just started talking about it. And I said, yeah, that's unfortunate. And I said, and the interesting thing is, what I've found is it's easier to be, maybe it's not easier, but it feels better, less energy, and I feel connected to myself and others when I can be kind, regardless of how I feel. But if I'm being kind, if I'm looking for what's right, if I'm looking for ways of connecting to others, I also connect to myself. So just on a heart level, just people are suffering. There's a lot of danger out there. There's a lot of anxiety. And so can we bring that love and compassion to self and other in ways that seem like little things, not extraordinary things, but things like just acknowledging each other, saying hello, reaching out to someone we hadn't talked to, say, hey, how you doing? I was thinking about you. Even if you leave a message, have a great day. So yeah, so to my mind, that's how I see making this switch from doing to being, and just realizing how can I connect to myself, because that's the biggest thing, feeling connected to self and other. And that's how we deal with injustice. That's how we deal with being being mean or feeding what I call the fear wolf and not feeding the love wolf. Starving the fear wolf and feeding the love wolf both exist inside of us, but the love wolf has more to do with being present for ourselves and others and seeking to understand and to see them with kind eyes, to see ourselves with kind eyes, with a compassionate heart, and just being open to understanding that this person, just like me, wants to be happy.